My brother called CPS on me because he was jealous I was a father and he was infertile. My daughter stayed with me, so he took it one step further and tried to take her from me by force. Fast forward. Now, he's willing to do anything, so I don't go through with what I'm planning, but there's nothing stopping me. My brother Connor and I had been inseparable since childhood. Fishing trip, sports clubs, you name it, we did it. We had an interesting dynamic. He was the loud one who always wanted to be the center of attention, and I was the quieter one who let him. But then I became a dad, and things changed. My daughter Mia was born with a rare autoimmune condition that left her in pain more often than not. My wife passed away a few years ago, and I've been raising Mia on my own ever since. It's been hard, but we've made it work. I never asked for praise. I just wanted her to feel safe and loved. A few months ago, I got promoted to head of the English department at the high school I've been teaching at for years. My family threw a dinner to celebrate. It should have been a good night, but Mia had a flare-up that evening. Her joints were inflamed, her arms bruised up, and she started limping. I kept an eye on her the whole time, gave her meds, helped her sit comfortably, made sure she had enough water. My in-laws were there, and at one point I overheard them telling someone how proud they were of me, how they felt Mia was lucky to have a dad like me. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but I noticed Connor sitting off to the side with a drink in his hand and a look on his face that didn't match the celebration. The next morning, CPS showed up at my front door. They told me they'd received a report of suspected abuse. They said someone had called in with concerns about Mia's bruises and claimed she wasn't getting proper medical care. I stood there holding the door open while they explained they'd need to see the house, take photos, and speak to Mia alone. I watched my daughter walk into her room with a stranger and close the door. I felt like I was standing in someone else's life. After they left, I stayed up all night gathering every piece of documentation I could find. Medical records, prescriptions, statements from her doctors. I called her specialist crying on the phone asking if they'd talk to CPS. He said of course, but it didn't stop there. Mia started acting different at school. She was quieter. She flinched when people touched her arm. One of her teachers called and asked if everything was okay at home. The second CPS visit landed on one of her bad days. Her hair was greasy because washing it hurt her scalp. Her bed wasn't made because she hadn't gotten out of it until noon. The worker made notes. I watched again, helpless. Then I read the official report, and that's when something clicked. Whoever reported us knew too much. They mentioned things only family would know. Things about our schedule, about where Mia's meds were stored, about our laundry routine. I knew right then someone close had done this. It all came out at a therapy session CPS required. Mia had been holding it in, but then she started crying and said she heard Uncle Connor on the phone telling someone, "Those bruises don't come from arthritis." I felt my chest tighten. My parents were furious. They cornered Grace, Connor's wife, that night. She denied it at first, but I could see it in her eyes. Later she came to me and told me everything. She said Connor hated me because I was a dad. He said he felt invisible next to me. He thought our family always saw me as the better man. He had been struggling with infertility for years, and seeing me take care of Mia had eaten him alive. We tried to bring the family together for dinner to clear the air. Connor showed up late and drunk. He immediately started with jabs about how perfect everyone thought I was. My parents tried to calm him down. Grace looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. Then Connor said something about how concerned he'd been for Mia. That's when Grace snapped. She told everyone that Connor had timed the CPS call to land during my promotion evaluation at school. My hands went numb. My dad stood up red in the face. Then Connor screamed, "He doesn't deserve to be a father." His voice cracked. He didn't mean to say it, but it was all there. Every bit of resentment. I pulled out my phone. I recorded the conversation just in case. I sent it straight to the CPS caseworker the next morning. She called me back, said the case was being closed. No evidence. False reporting. A criminal offense in our state. It was over, officially, but not really. My parents told Connor to leave their house and not come back. Grace packed a bag and went to stay with her sister. I didn't speak to Connor for months, and I wish it stayed that way. But then Mia didn't come home from school one day. I waited at the bus stop, but she never got off. I called the school, and they said she'd been picked up early by her uncle. They said he was on the approved list from when Sarah was alive, but they should have called me to verify since it had been years since he picked her up. The school secretary mentioned that Mia seemed hesitant, but that Connor had told her I was stuck in a meeting and had asked him to pick her up. I called Connor's phone over and over. No answer. I called Grace, who hadn't spoken to him in weeks. I called my parents. No one knew where he was. I drove to his apartment, but no one answered the door. I called the police immediately, explaining that my chronically ill daughter who needed daily medication had been taken by my estranged brother with a history of false reporting against me. Despite this, the officer told me they typically wait 24 hours in family-related cases, but would send a patrol car to Connor's last known address, given Mia's medical needs. They told me to try to resolve it within the family first while they began preliminary inquiries. I wanted to scream that this was exactly what I was afraid of. I'm sitting here now, waiting for the 24-hour mark so I can file a missing persons report. My daughter is out there somewhere with a man who resents her very existence. A man who tried to have her taken away from me out of jealousy. I don't know what to do. I don't know where they are. I just want my daughter back. I've been pacing around my living room for hours, checking my phone every 30 seconds like it might suddenly give me answers. The police finally took a report after the 24-hour mark passed, but I could tell they weren't treating it as a priority. The officer kept saying things like family disputes and custody disagreements. While I tried to explain that this wasn't some divorced dad drama, my brother literally called CPS on me out of jealousy and now had my chronically ill daughter who needed her medication. I called Mia's doctor first thing in the morning to explain the situation. She immediately understood the severity. Mia needed her anti-inflammatory meds every 12 hours, or she'd start experiencing increased pain and swelling. The doctor offered to call hospitals if Mia showed up anywhere and said she'd document everything in case we needed it for court later. I thanked her through tears. My parents showed up at my house around noon, both looking like they hadn't slept. Mom's eyes were red and puffy, and Dad kept rubbing his face like he was trying to wake up from a nightmare. They brought coffee and sandwiches that none of us touched. We sat at my kitchen table staring at Mia's empty chair while Dad called everyone he could think of who might know where Connor would go. "What about that fishing cabin?" Mom suddenly asked. "The one Uncle Pete used to own up near Lake Millerton?" I froze. The cabin, of course. Our uncle had left it to Connor and me jointly when he died 10 years ago, but Connor was the only one who ever used it. I hadn't been there in years. It was remote, about 3 hours north, with spotty cell service and few neighbors. Perfect for hiding. I grabbed my keys and Mia's medication bag. Mom packed some food while Dad called the local sheriff's department up there. They said they'd send someone to check it out, but the deputy was covering a large area, and it might take a while. I couldn't wait. I told my parents to stay at my house in case Connor brought Mia back, and I hit the road. The drive was torture. 3 hours of imagining worst-case scenarios, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I tried calling Connor's phone every 20 minutes, but it went straight to voicemail each time. I left messages that started calm and ended desperate. I pulled up to the cabin around 4 p.m. Connor's car was parked outside. My heart nearly exploded with relief. They were here. I sat in my car for a minute, trying to decide how to approach this. I didn't want to scare Mia or escalate things with Connor. I decided to just walk up normally, like this was any other visit. The cabin door was unlocked. I pushed it open and called out Mia's name. I heard shuffling from the back bedroom. Then Connor appeared in the hallway. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes bloodshot, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. He didn't seem surprised to see me. "Where's Mia?" I asked. trying to keep my voice steady. Connor gestured toward the back bedroom. She's resting. Her knees were hurting. The casual way he said it, like he hadn't just kidnapped my daughter, made my blood boil. I pushed past him and found Mia curled up on the bed, her face tear-stained but calm. When she saw me, she sat up and reached out her arms. I rushed to her, checking her over for any signs of harm. She seemed physically okay, just scared and confused. Did you take your medicine, sweetie? I asked her. She shook her head. Uncle Connor said we forgot to bring it. I pulled her medication from my bag and helped her take it, then turned to face Connor, who was standing in the doorway watching us. I told Mia to stay put while I talked to her uncle in the other room. In the kitchen, Connor sat down heavily at the table. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He just sat there staring at his hands. I wanted to scream at him, maybe even hit him, but I kept thinking about Mia in the next room. I needed to get her home safely, not escalate this into something worse. What were you thinking? I finally asked. Connor looked up, his eyes vacant. I wanted to show you how it feels, to have something taken from you. The words hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just jealousy. This was something darker, more twisted. I realized I was dealing with someone I no longer recognized, someone capable of using a child as a pawn in some sick game of emotional revenge. I'm taking Mia home, I said firmly, and then I'm filing a restraining order against you. Something flashed in Connor's eyes. Anger, maybe fear. He stood up suddenly. You can't do that. She's my niece. I have rights too. I laughed bitterly. Rights? You kidnapped her from school. You didn't bring her medication. You called CPS on me with false allegations. You have no rights here. I turned to go get Mia, but Connor grabbed my arm. His grip was tight, desperate. You don't understand. I need her. I need to be part of her life. It's not fair that you get to be a father and I don't. I yanked my arm away. This isn't about you. This is about Mia's safety and well-being. You're not thinking about what she needs. You're only thinking about yourself. Connor's face twisted with rage. That's what everyone always thinks. Poor James. Such a good dad. Such a good son. Such a good brother. No one ever sees what I go through. I was about to respond when I heard a small voice behind me. Daddy, I want to go home. Mia was standing in the hallway, her arms wrapped around herself. The sight of her snapped me back to what mattered. I walked over and picked her up, ignoring Connor's protests. I carried her to my car and buckled her in, then went back for her backpack. Connor followed me outside, still talking, still trying to justify what he'd done, but I tuned him out. I was done listening. As I started the car, Connor stood in front of it, blocking our way. I rolled down the window and told him to move. He refused, crossing his arms like a petulant child. I pulled out my phone and held it up. Move, or I call the police right now and have you arrested for kidnapping. He hesitated, then slowly stepped aside. As I drove away, I watched him in the rearview mirror, standing in the dirt driveway looking lost. For a second, I felt a pang of something like pity. Then I remembered what he'd put us through, and the feeling evaporated. The drive home was quiet. Mia fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the stress and probably from missed medication. I called my parents to let them know we were on our way back, and the police to update them. The officer I spoke with said they'd want statements from both me and Mia, and that I should bring her to the station tomorrow. He also mentioned I should consider pressing charges. We got home around 8 p.m. My parents were waiting, and Mom burst into tears when she saw Mia. We got her fed, bathed, and tucked into bed with minimal fuss. She seemed reluctant to talk about what happened with Connor, so I didn't push it. There would be time for that later, maybe with a professional present. After Mia was asleep, I sat with my parents at the kitchen table. Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him, the lines in his face deeper, his shoulders slumped with the weight of what his son had done. Mom kept wiping her eyes with a crumpled tissue. They asked what I wanted to do next. I'm getting a restraining order first thing tomorrow, I said, and I'm changing all the emergency contact information at Mia's school. They nodded, not arguing. Dad cleared his throat. We'll support whatever you decide, James. Connor crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. The next morning, I took Mia to the police station. The detective who interviewed her was kind and patient, asking gentle questions about what happened. Mia told her that Uncle Connor had said I was stuck in a meeting and needed him to pick her up, that they went for ice cream first, then drove to the cabin. She said he seemed weird and sad, and kept asking her questions about me. If I ever got angry, if I ever forgot her medicine, if I ever made her do things that hurt. Classic attempts to get her to say something he could use against me. The detective told me we had a solid case for a restraining order at minimum, possibly criminal charges if I wanted to pursue them. I wasn't sure yet. Part of me wanted Connor to face consequences, but another part wondered if that would just make things worse. I decided to focus on the restraining order first, and think about the rest later. I filed the paperwork that afternoon. The judge granted a temporary order immediately, citing the potential danger to Mia. Connor would have to stay at least 500 feet away from both of us, and have no contact whatsoever. The court date for the permanent order was set for 2 weeks later. That evening, Grace called me. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She'd heard what happened from my parents, and was horrified. She kept apologizing, saying she should have warned me that Connor had been acting erratic lately, talking about Mia constantly, looking at old family photos for hours. She told me she'd moved most of her things out of their apartment and filed for divorce. The Connor she married was gone, she said, replaced by someone consumed with bitterness and obsession. I felt bad for Grace. She was collateral damage in all this, another victim of Connor's spiral. I told her I didn't blame her for any of it. We talked for almost an hour, and by the end, she sounded a little calmer. She promised to let me know if Connor contacted her or said anything about us. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Connor to show up at our house or call or do something, but there was nothing. I checked in with the police daily, but they hadn't heard from him either. His apartment manager said he hadn't been home. His boss reported he hadn't shown up for work. It was like he'd vanished. Mia went back to school after missing 3 days. I met with the principal and explained the situation in detail. They updated their security protocols, making sure every staff member knew that only I was authorized to pick Mia up. No exceptions. They also assigned a counselor to check in with her daily, which I appreciated. Mia seemed okay on the surface, but I noticed she was having trouble sleeping and was more clingy than usual. A week after the cabin incident, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Connor's friend Jordan. He said Connor had been staying at his place but left that morning after seeing the news about the restraining order on Jordan's computer. Connor had taken Jordan's spare car keys and disappeared. Jordan seemed genuinely concerned, saying Connor had been talking strangely, making comments about fixing things, and showing everyone the truth. I thanked Jordan for the warning and immediately called the police. They said they'd increase patrols in our neighborhood, but couldn't do much else without evidence of an immediate threat. I felt helpless all over again. I called my parents to warn them, then my in-laws. Everyone was on high alert. That night, I double-checked all the locks before bed and slept with my phone right next to my pillow. I woke up every hour or so, listening for any unusual sounds. The house remained quiet, too quiet. In the morning, I found a note slipped under our front door. It was from Connor. All it said was, "I'm sorry. I'm going to make this right." The handwriting was shaky, like he'd written it while drunk or extremely emotional. I called the police again and gave them the note. They took it seriously this time, saying it could be interpreted as a threat. They promised to send an officer to escort Mia to and from school. I was a nervous wreck all day at work. I kept checking my phone, calling home during my breaks to make sure the alarm system was still armed, texting the police officer who was watching our house. My colleagues noticed something was wrong, but I gave them a vague explanation about family issues. I couldn't focus on teaching. My students probably thought I was losing my mind. When I picked Mia up from school, the police officer followed us home. He did a quick sweep of the house before leaving, promising to check back throughout the evening. I thanked him, feeling slightly safer but still on edge. Mia and I were eating dinner when my phone rang. It was Grace. She was talking fast, her voice high with panic. Connor had called called her, sounding drunk and rambling about making things right. He'd mentioned Mia several times and said something about evidence that would prove I was an unfit father. Grace was terrified he was planning something drastic. I hung up and immediately called the police again. While I was on the phone, I heard a car pull into our driveway. Through the window, I saw Jordan's car. Connor was getting out, stumbling slightly. He was carrying something in his hand. It looked like a folder or envelope. I told Mia to go to her room and lock the door, then told the 911 operator that Connor was at my house, violating the restraining order. They said officers were on their way. I hung up and watched through the window as Connor approached the front door. He rang the doorbell. I didn't answer. He rang it again, then started pounding on the door. "James, open up! I need to talk to you. I have something important." I stayed silent, watching him through the peephole. He looked terrible. Unshaven, hair unwashed, clothes rumpled. His eyes were wild, unfocused. The folder in his hand was stuffed with papers that kept slipping out as he moved. "I know you're in there," he shouted. "I just want to talk. I have proof. I can show everyone the truth about you." I heard sirens in the distance. Connor heard them too. He looked panicked for a moment, then determined. He started trying to force papers under the door. Medical records, it looked like. Copies of Mia's files that he must have somehow obtained when he broke into our house earlier to leave that note. Pages with certain sections highlighted, notes scribbled in the margins. "See?" he was saying, his voice cracking. "It's all here. The inconsistencies, the signs. Everyone will see I was right to be concerned." The sirens got louder. Connor became more frantic, shoving papers under the door faster, talking to himself now more than to me. I could smell alcohol through the door. He was completely unhinged. The police cars pulled up, lights flashing. Two officers approached Connor cautiously, telling him to step away from the door and put his hands up. He ignored them, still pushing papers under the door, still talking about evidence and truth. One of the officers grabbed Connor's arm. Connor jerked away violently, spinning around with his fists raised. The officers reacted immediately, forcing him to the ground and handcuffing him. Connor was screaming now, incoherent things about me and Mia, and how no one ever believed him. I opened the door once Connor was secured in the police car. The officers asked if I wanted to press charges for violating the restraining order. I nodded, numb. One of them collected the scattered papers as evidence. I glanced at them. They were indeed Mia's medical records, but with Connor's paranoid interpretation scrawled all over them. He'd circled bruises and photographs, written suspicious next to normal test results, connected unrelated symptoms with drawn lines to create patterns that didn't exist. It was the work of someone who had completely lost touch with reality. I gave my statement to the police, then checked on Mia. She was hiding in her closet, crying silently. She'd heard everything. I held her for a long time, promising that she was safe now, that Uncle Connor couldn't hurt us anymore. She asked if he was sick. I said yes, he was sick in his mind and needed help that we couldn't give him. It was the simplest explanation I could offer. The next day, I learned that Connor had been charged with violating the restraining order, breaking and entering. He'd apparently been in our house earlier while we were out, which explained how he left the note, and harassment. He was being held without bail pending a psychiatric evaluation. The officer I spoke with said Connor had been ranting about conspiracies during processing, claiming that doctors were covering up my abuse of Mia and that the entire family was in on it. My parents were devastated. Mom couldn't stop crying. Dad just sat in silence, occasionally shaking his head like he couldn't believe any of this was happening. They'd lost a son, in a way. The Connor they raised was gone, replaced by this paranoid, jealous stranger who had terrorized his own family. Grace filed for an emergency divorce and moved in with her sister permanently. She called me to apologize again and to let me know she was starting therapy to process everything. She also mentioned that Connor had been hiding his struggles with mental health for years, refusing to see doctors or take medication that had been prescribed after a breakdown in college. I hadn't known about any of that. Connor had always seemed like the confident, outgoing one. I wondered how long he'd been suffering in silence, how long the jealousy and resentment had been building. The psychiatric evaluation confirmed what we all suspected. Connor was experiencing paranoid delusions focused specifically on me and Mia. The doctor explained that his infertility issues had likely triggered a breakdown, with his jealousy of my relationship with Mia becoming the focal point of his delusions. They diagnosed him with delusional disorder and recommended inpatient treatment. The court date for the permanent restraining order came 2 weeks later. Connor appeared via video from the psychiatric facility where he was being held. He looked sedated, his eyes dull, his responses slow. The judge granted the permanent order without hesitation, barring Connor from coming within 1,000 feet of Mia or me for the next 5 years. The criminal charges were being handled separately, but his lawyer was pursuing an insanity defense. I felt hollow watching the proceedings. This was my brother, my childhood best friend, now a stranger speaking in monotone from a hospital room. Part of me mourned the relationship we'd lost. Another part remained terrified of what he might have done if the police hadn't arrived when they did. Mia started seeing a child psychologist to help her process everything. The therapist said she was doing remarkably well considering the circumstances, but might have trust issues with male authority figures for a while. I noticed she was more hesitant around my dad and her male teachers, watching them carefully like she was waiting for them to change suddenly the way her uncle had. A month after Connor's arrest, I received a letter from him. It had been screened by his doctors, who included a note saying they felt it was part of his therapy to express remorse, and that I could decide whether to read it or not. I let it sit on my desk for 3 days before finally opening it. The letter was surprisingly lucid. Connor apologized for everything. The CPS call, taking Mia from school, showing up at our house. He said he was starting to understand, with medication and therapy, how distorted his thinking had become. He wrote about feeling like he'd failed at the one thing he wanted most, being a father, and how watching me with Mia had triggered something dark inside him. He didn't ask for forgiveness or for contact. He just wanted me to know he was getting help and would respect the restraining order completely. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. Maybe someday, but not yet. The wounds were still too fresh, the fear still too real. I showed the letter to my parents, who had been visiting the facility weekly. They said Connor was making progress, but had a long road ahead. Dad asked if I'd ever consider family therapy with Connor once he was more stable. I said I'd think about it, but made no promises. Life slowly returned to something resembling normal. Mia went back to her regular activities. Her condition had flared badly during the stress of everything, but was now under better control. The school year ended, and summer began. We planned a vacation to the beach, something to look forward to. 2 days before we were set to leave, I got a call from the psychiatric facility. Connor had been caught trying to access a computer to look up our address. He'd been making progress, they said, but had suffered a setback. They were adjusting his medication and increasing his therapy sessions. They assured me we were safe. He was in a secure facility and wouldn't be released anytime soon, but wanted me to be aware. The news shook me. I'd started to believe Connor was getting better, that maybe someday we could rebuild some kind of relationship. Now I wasn't sure that would ever be possible. The realization hurt more than I expected. I didn't tell Mia about the call. She'd been doing so well, smiling more, sleeping through the night again. I didn't want to set her back. Instead, I focused on our upcoming trip, on creating new memories to help overshadow the bad ones. The night before we left for vacation, Mia crawled into my bed around midnight. She was half asleep, mumbling something about Uncle Connor being at her window. I checked her room thoroughly, knowing it was impossible. We were on the second floor, and Connor was locked in a facility across the state, but needing to reassure her anyway. There was nothing there, of course, just the wind moving the branches of the tree outside her window, creating shadows on the wall. I let her sleep in my bed that night. As I watched her peaceful face, I thought about everything we'd been through, the loss of her mother, her ongoing health struggles, and now this betrayal by someone who should have loved and protected her. Yet here she was, resilient and brave, still able to trust, still able to find joy. I made a silent promise to her and to myself. No matter what happened with Connor in the future, no matter how his treatment progressed or regressed, I would always put Mia's safety and well-being first. Some relationships couldn't be fixed, and that was okay. Some boundaries needed to stay in place permanently. In the morning, we packed the car for our beach trip. As we pulled out of the driveway, Mia asked if Uncle Connor would ever come back to our house. I told her honestly that I didn't know, but that she didn't need to worry about it. We had each other, and we were going to be okay. I looked in the rearview mirror at Mia's face as we drove away from our neighborhood. She seemed lighter somehow, like leaving the house had lifted a weight off her small shoulders. The beach was about 4 hours away, and I'd packed enough of her medications, heating pads, and special pillows to last us twice as long as we planned to stay. Better safe than sorry. We were about an hour into the drive when my phone rang. I connected it to the car's Bluetooth and heard my mom's voice fill the car. "James, honey, I just wanted to check that you two got on the road okay." I assured her we were fine and making good time. She sounded tired, that same heaviness in her voice that had been there since Connor's breakdown. I knew she'd been visiting him at the facility 3 times a week, bringing him clean clothes and books. Dad went less often, just once a week, and he rarely talked about the visits afterward. "The doctors say he's having a good day today," Mom said quietly. "He asked about your trip." I felt my hands tighten on the steering wheel. "Mom, we've talked about this. I don't want updates about Connor right now." She sighed. I know. He's still your brother, James." I glanced at Mia in the rearview mirror. She was looking out the window, but I could tell by the set of her shoulders that she was listening. I changed the subject, asking Mom about her garden, and we chatted for a few more minutes before hanging up. The rest of the drive was uneventful. We stopped for lunch at a diner where Mia got chocolate chip pancakes even though it was 2 p.m. I let her have an extra scoop of ice cream too. Sometimes being a good parent meant bending the rules a little, especially after everything she'd been through. Our beach rental was perfect, a small cottage with a screened porch that faced the ocean. Mia ran straight to the water's edge while I unloaded the car. I watched her from the porch, making sure she didn't go in past her ankles. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in pinks and oranges. For the first time in months, I felt myself relax a little. The next few days were exactly what we needed. Mia built sandcastles while I read books on a beach chair nearby. We collected shells and spotted dolphins. Her joints seemed to like the warm, humid air, and she moved more easily than she had in weeks. At night, we played board games and watched movies with the windows open so we could hear the waves. On our 4th day, I was setting up our spot on the beach when I noticed a woman staring at us from about 50 yards away. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. She turned away quickly when she saw me looking. I felt a twinge of unease, but pushed it aside. We were on vacation. I was being paranoid. An hour later, I saw her again, closer this time. She was pretending to read a book, but I could feel her watching us. I stood up, ready to confront her, when she suddenly got up and walked toward us. As she got closer, I recognized her. Linda, Connor's ex-girlfriend from college. They dated for 3 years before Grace came along. "James?" she called, waving hesitantly. "I thought that was you." I nodded stiffly, positioning myself between her and Mia, who was digging in the sand nearby. Linda stopped a few feet away, looking uncomfortable. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said. I heard about Connor. Grace called me a few weeks ago. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? Linda shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "I wanted you to know that I saw this coming years ago," she finally said. "The jealousy, the paranoia, it's why we broke up. He used to accuse me of cheating constantly, would go through my phone while I was sleeping. When I got accepted to grad school and he didn't, he convinced himself the admissions committee was conspiring against him. I felt a chill despite the warm sun. Why are you telling me this?" Linda looked past me to where Mia was playing. "Because Grace mentioned you might try family therapy eventually, and I wanted to warn you. Connor doesn't get better. He just gets better at hiding it until the next trigger comes along." I thanked her for the warning, though it left me feeling hollow. She gave me her number in case I ever wanted to talk, then walked away. I watched her go, wondering how many other people had seen signs of Connor's instability over the years while I remained oblivious. That night, after Mia was asleep, I sat on the porch with my phone, scrolling through old photos of Connor and me. There we were at my wedding, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning. There he was, holding newborn Mia in the hospital, looking at her with such tenderness. Had it all been an act, or had something in him broken along the way? I was so lost in thought I almost missed the notification that popped up on my screen. An email from Grace with the subject line, "You need to see this." I opened it with shaking hands. "James," it read. "I was cleaning out the apartment and found this on Connor's laptop. It's a journal he kept about you and Mia. I think you should see it before I turn it over to his doctors. I'm so sorry." Attached was a PDF document. I hesitated before opening it, not sure I wanted to see inside my brother's disturbed mind, but I needed to know what we were dealing with. The journal entries started 3 years ago, right around when Connor and Grace began fertility treatments. The early entries were sad but relatively normal. Connor expressing disappointment about failed IVF attempts, jealousy about my relationship with Mia, frustration that parenting seemed to come naturally to me. But about a year ago, the tone changed dramatically. Connor started writing about signs he noticed when visiting our house. Normal parenting moments twisted into something sinister. Me giving Mia medicine became drugging her to keep her compliant. Me helping her with her homework became controlling her mind. The bruises from her condition became evidence of abuse. The most recent entries were completely detached from reality. Connor wrote about elaborate conspiracies involving me, Mia's doctors, and even our parents. He detailed plans to rescue Mia from me. The final entry, dated the day before he took Mia from school, simply said, "Tomorrow, I save her. Tomorrow, everyone will see the truth." I closed the document feeling sick. This wasn't just jealousy. This was a complete psychotic break. Connor truly believed he was saving Mia from me. In his mind, he was the hero of this story. I forwarded the journal to Connor's doctors with a brief note explaining where it came from. Then I deleted the file from my phone. I couldn't bear to have those twisted thoughts anywhere near me. The rest of our vacation passed without incident, but Linda's warning and Connor's journal haunted me. By the time we packed up to head home, I'd made a decision. We weren't going back to our house. Not yet. I needed to make sure we were truly safe. I called my in-laws from the road and asked if we could stay with them for a while. They agreed immediately. No questions asked. I explained to Mia that we were going to have a special visit with Grandma and Grandpa Williams. She was excited. Their house had a pool and a dog, 2 things our home lacked. At my in-laws, I finally told them everything. About Linda's warning, about Connor's journal, about my fears that he might somehow get out or convince someone to help him. My father-in-law, a retired police officer, listened carefully and then made some calls to friends still on the force. They agreed to increase patrols near our empty house and to put a note in the system about Connor's fixation on us. A week into our stay, the psychiatric facility called. Connor had been caught trying to send letters to Mia through another patient's outgoing mail. The letters themselves were disturbing, full of coded messages about rescue plans and warnings about me. The facility director apologized profusely and assured me they were moving Connor to a more secure unit with stricter monitoring. I thanked him, then asked the question that had been weighing on me. Is he ever going to get better? There was a long pause. Mr. Williams, your brother has what we call treatment-resistant delusional disorder with persecutory features. The delusions are specifically focused on you and your daughter. While medication can help manage his symptoms, the prognosis for complete recovery is limited. The words hit me like a physical blow. Connor wasn't going to get better. This wasn't a temporary breakdown that could be fixed with the right pills and therapy. This was who he was now, maybe who he'd always been beneath the surface. That night, I sat down with my in-laws to make a plan. We needed to think long-term about Mia's safety and well-being. My father-in-law suggested we consider moving, not just temporarily, but permanently, somewhere Connor wouldn't know to look if he ever got out. My mother-in-law reminded me that Sarah had always wanted to move to the coast, somewhere Mia could grow up near the ocean. The idea took root in my mind. A fresh start, somewhere new, somewhere without the weight of painful memories and constant fear. I spent the next few days researching coastal towns with good schools and medical facilities that could handle Mia's condition. I found a few promising options within a day's drive. 2 weeks after our beach vacation, I took Mia to see our house one last time. We walked through each room together, talking about the memories we'd made there. I let her choose a few special items to take with us, beyond what I'd already packed. She picked a wind chime from the backyard that Sarah had hung years ago, the growth chart marked on her bedroom doorframe, and a jar of sea glass we'd collected on our vacation. As we were leaving, our neighbor Barbara came over to say goodbye. She'd been keeping an eye on the house for us and knew we were moving. She hugged me tightly and slipped something into my hand, a check for far more money than I expected for our house. Turns out she'd been wanting to buy it for her daughter's family for years and was happy to pay above market value to help us start over. With the house sold and most of our belongings either packed or donated, we were ready to leave. I'd already accepted a position at a high school in our new town, starting in the fall. Mia was registered for the local elementary school, and I'd found a pediatric rheumatologist who specialized in cases like hers. The day before we left, my parents came to say goodbye. It was a hard conversation. They understood why we needed to go, but the pain of losing both their sons, one to mental illness and one to distance, was written clearly on their faces. Mom made me promise to call often and to send pictures of Mia. Dad helped load the last few boxes into the moving truck, then pulled me into a fierce hug. "You're doing the right thing," he said gruffly. "Protecting your daughter comes first, always." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. We both knew that this move meant accepting a painful truth. The brother I grew up with was gone, replaced by someone dangerous who might never recover. Moving away wasn't just about physical safety. It was about acknowledging that some relationships can't be saved, no matter how much we wish they could. The next morning, Mia and I hit the road before dawn. Our new town was about 8 hours away, a small coastal community with colorful houses and friendly people. I'd found us a little blue cottage just 3 blocks from the beach, with a fenced yard where Mia could play safely. As we drove, Mia chatted excitedly about the sea turtles she hoped to see and the new friends she might make. We arrived just as the sun was setting. Mia ran straight to the backyard while I started unloading the essentials for our first night. I watched her exploring. Her face lit up with excitement and felt something settle in my chest. We were going to be okay. That night, after Mia was asleep in her new room, I sat on our porch and called the psychiatric facility. I asked them not to tell Connor where we'd gone. I explained that while I hoped he would get better someday, I couldn't risk Mia's safety or happiness on that possibility. The doctor I spoke with understood completely and assured me they would respect our privacy. 6 months later, we were fully settled into our new life. Mia loved her school and had made several friends. Her new doctors had adjusted her medication and she was having fewer bad days. I joined a single parent support group and was slowly learning to trust people again. Connor remained in the secure facility. My parents visited him regularly and gave me careful updates. He was still fixated on his delusions about me and Mia, but the new medications were helping him stay calmer. He'd stopped trying to contact us, which the doctor saw as progress. Sometimes I still looked at old photos and mourned the brother I'd lost. But then I'd look at Mia, healthy, happy, safe, and know I'd made the right choice. Family isn't just about blood. It's about protection, trust, and putting your child's needs above everything else. Yesterday, Mia asked if Uncle Connor would ever come visit us in our new home. I told her the truth, that Uncle Connor was very sick and needed to stay in a special hospital where doctors could help him. I said that even though we couldn't see him, we could still remember the good times we had together before he got sick. She seemed satisfied with that answer. As for me, I've accepted that the brother I knew is gone. Maybe someday, if Connor truly recovers, we can build something new, but I'm not counting on it. Instead, I'm focusing on the family I have. Mia, my in-laws, my parents, and the new friends we're making in our coastal town. We're building a good life here, one day at a time, and that's enough.